Yo, guys, I hope you're well. So, guys, tonight we've got Ann Widdecombe, and she is talking about why we should not support no platforming. So, here at Urb'n Barz, I'm a massive, lifelong advocate of free speech and freedom of speech. And here we have Ann Widdecombe, and I'm not certain if everyone knows who Ann Widdecombe is and what her career has been, but she is or was an ex-Tory minister, and she's now with the Reform UK Party as Immigration and Justice spokesperson. She used to be the Minister of State for Prisons and also the Shadow Home Secretary under the Tories in the 1990s. So here, Ann Widdecombe, she's speaking at the Oxford Union Debating Society, world famous, of course, and she's speaking on censorship. So I looked at this. This is about 12 minutes long, people, and I was thinking about how can I cut this down. But looking at it, and I tried, and I thought if I cut this down, I won't be giving Ann Widdecombe justice here on her speech. So guys, I hope you got the time to listen to this in its full entirety. I might just chip in a little bit here and there, but to be honest with you, Ann Widdecombe says everything that I agree with, so let's get it on.
And I now look to Ann Widdecombe, ex-secretary, ex-treasurer, to close the case for the opposition tonight.
And guys, before we start, isn't it great to see, and this is how I was brought up from a very young person living in England all my life, people, born and bred in England, as always to be able to debate, to hear both sides of a story or both sides of a question or both sides of an argument even. I was always taught to debate, to listen and then to respond and then listen again, but it is what it is, people.
Hello, Oxford Union. Here I am, right back where I started from 50 years ago.
And I should have said, people, I'm remiss at not telling you. I think this was done either in 2017 or 2019, so it's about 5 or 7 years old, this debate.
And do you know what the subject of my first paper speech was? It was censorship. Plus ça change, as Juncker might say. Now, tonight is crucial. This is not just any old Thursday debate at the Oxford Union. There was a moment in the past when what happened here had reverberations round the world. And that was when this House decided that it would not fight for king and country. And it gave immense comfort to a rather nasty regime.
Wow. So the Oxford Union said they would not fight for king and country. Wow.
And tonight it is crucial that this House, this bastion of freedom, this renowned historical organisation that has always been devoted to free speech, does not tonight go the other way and make a decision in favour of censorship.
So guys, even back then, so that's like 5 or 7 years ago, it looks like there was some kind of drawing from some sources to try to end some of our free speech. I'm not exactly sure where that was coming from, but this attack on people's free speech and freedom of speech isn't a new thing. I think they've been trying to stop people's free speech for a very long time, and I'm not sure the reason why.
What we are debating here tonight is crucial. Now, I speak with feeling. When I was growing up, it was in the immediate post-war period when people had lost sons, husbands, fathers to the Nazis. They'd lost limbs and faced a life of disability. They had lost homes. They had lost them to a vile regime called National Socialism. And yet, Oswald Mosley and Colin Jordan
Not nice people to know, probably.
and other such charming souls were allowed in law to hold their rallies in this country.
So even though these people who were advocates of National Socialism, they were still not denied in law to speak their minds. And that is what freedom of speech is. We may find it reprehensible, what they're saying, but they are, or they were within law, still allowed to say what they felt, even though most people would find it reprehensible. And that is the whole makings of freedom of speech, people. That's what freedom of speech is. You may not like what you hear, but the person or the persons are allowed to say it.
You think how much offence, how much hurt, how much insult that caused to people who had made such major sacrifices. But the devotion to free speech and the recognition that we had spent 6 years fighting for liberty led us to believe that it was preferable to have free speech than not to be offended.
That is so important, especially in today's climate. It was thought and considered to be more preferable to have free speech, freedom of speech, than not to be offended.
And then a few years later, when I was here, we were right at the height of the Cold War. And it's difficult to remember 30 years after the Berlin Wall came down. But we were actually at a stage when all along the borders of what were then the Warsaw Pact countries, the Soviet Union had stationed weapons pointing straight at us. And yet, you could still stand for Parliament as a communist.
Really?
You probably wouldn't get in, but you could still stand. You could stand on street corners and sell the Morning Star.
Wow.
You could subscribe openly to the Communist Party. And I expect that gave a lot of offence, and that caused a lot of hurt, and probably also alarm. But we believed that free speech was more important. Now only...
So free speech is more important. So today, what's happening with the riots, etc., is this government is trying to clamp down on free speech, free thinking, free thought. I can never say that word. Getting a bit tongue twisted there, but for whatever reason and whatever plans they have, they've used or they're using something which is falling into their lap. So the riots that have been happening over the last whatever period have used that now to really double down on, in their minds, tackling a problem which is derived from free speech or freedom of speech, which most sane and forward thinking and normal common sense thinking people can't see the reason. They can't see any reason why freedom of speech should be targeted in the way it's been targeted in the last few days. And they're not just targeting freedom of speech in this country, they're looking further afield. They've identified people like Elon Musk and X as targets for, or targets to be to be re-educated potentially. Really?
Only two sorts of people oppose free speech. And they are at opposite ends of the scale.
So Ann Widdecombe said there are two different types of people who oppose freedom of speech, and they sit at polar opposites of the scale. So who are these people?
Snowflakes and totalitarians.
Snowflakes and totalitarians.
Now, Celeste. Celeste says there's nothing wrong with being a snowflake. No, you can be as snowflakish as you like, providing you don't try to impose that on other people. I am offended, upset, insulted at least 30 times a day. Tough. Celeste upset me. Celeste wounded me. Celeste has caused me trauma. She poured scorn on my paso doble.
So if anyone doesn't know, I've never actually watched the programme, but I think that Ann Widdecombe did Strictly Come Dancing at some point. So I think Paso Doble is a move in ballroom. I'm not sure if it's ballroom dancing, but one of the types of dancing. So this lady here must be the lady she's talking about, Celeste. And obviously she was her dance partner, dance teacher, tutor. And obviously Ann Widdecombe probably suffered quite a lot over many hours of trying to learn to do the dances they did every Saturday night. So Ann Widdecombe's just using that as an example of someone who could upset you, etc., but you still give that person the freedom to be able to express an opinion.
And does she realise that in 15 years' time, I am still going to be traumatised and I am going to form a movement. Me Too dancers who were insulted in the Oxford Union. Oh, come on. Nobody has the right to live their lives being protected from offence or from insult or from hurt feelings. It is an occupational hazard of living in society.
Really?
And if you really can't take it, become a hermit. But more seriously, on the opposite end from the snowflakes, poor little darlings, on the opposite end from them are the totalitarians. And that was how Hitler was so successful, because he did not allow any free speech whatever.
Seems like history is about to repeat itself.
And if you spoke out against that sickening regime, or indeed against the Soviet Union, 2 minutes more, no, I need at least 5, or spoke out in the Soviet Union, you would end up in prison, if not worse. Totalitarians like to curtail your right to disagree with state orthodoxy.
Wow. Totalitarians like to disagree with your right to disagree with state orthodoxy.
Now, for state orthodoxy, substitute the words social orthodoxy. As exemplified by social media, Twitter and other such places where people decide what is and what is not acceptable.
I think that's all these cancel culture bits. I never got involved in that, people. It's way above my pay station and my pay grade. Cancel culture, PC, political correctness. I have no idea what that's about, people, so I just distance myself from it.
Now, I would love to stand in this union and oppose and argue with and take to pieces a Holocaust denier. But if we say no, we can never have the Holocaust denier because his views are so offensive that he cannot be accorded a platform. Then what happens? That sort of viewpoint is driven underground where it can quite often flourish.
Fester.
And people whisper behind their hands, Oh, you know, there's something in what he says, but we're not allowed to hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
And by hearing it, we can destroy it.
Absolutely, because you can debate with these people. If you disagree with them, or you can agree with them, but it needs to be debated, it needs to be heard. All sides of the equation need to be put out into the open and heard and debated, and we come to some common ground.
We should also remember.
There you go.
We should also remember that today's heresy can become tomorrow's credo.
I like that. Today's heresy could become tomorrow's credo. So what was happening and what was said 20, 30 years ago, opinions and viewpoints have changed over those 20, 30 years. So something which was probably not really, was frowned on 30 years ago may well be welcome now, and vice versa. So things change, people.
How fortunate we were that the Wilberforces of this world,
That William
the
Wilberforce,
Pankhursts, the Martin Luther Kings,
MLK.
and everybody else who has over time and with massive effort changed society, how grateful we may be that they were not no platforms because it offended the society of their time. Now, I recently was asked if I objected to sharing a platform with somebody who had spoken in favour of, had not been involved in, but had spoken in favour of the IRA. Now, I lost a friend in the Brighton bomb. I missed the Brighton bomb by less than 20 minutes. And I looked at this person and I said, "So you wanted to blow me up?" And she said, "Well, I didn't want to do it myself." I do not object to sharing a platform and arguing with her, because by arguing with her, I can expose what is wrong. It is absolutely right that we should allow people, no matter how profoundly we disagree with them. I hate to utter cliches in this august debating hall, but I am going to utter one. That no matter how much we may disagree with somebody, we should defend to the hilt their right to say it. And that is something that I have believed all my life. That you succeed by defeating your opponent, not by wishing him away. You get nowhere by trying not to hear what is being said, not to hear the other arguments. As I said at the beginning, and I do passionately appeal to you tonight, this is not about which side wins. This is about whether the Oxford Union, of all bodies, will vote in favour of the diminution of free speech. Whether we will agree, and I say we because I'm a life member of this place, whether we will agree that somebody else may decide what we can and can't hear. And just remember this, you may feel virtuous today in what you will not hear, but tomorrow somebody may feel virtuous in not hearing what you have to say. Free speech is for all, not for the privileged few.
Brilliant. Totally agree. Free speech is for all and not for the privileged few. Fantastic. So that's the Oxford Union Society, people. Wow. There's nothing more to say though, is there, really? Guys, so that was Ann Widdecombe, and she was speaking on behalf of free speech, on the right for free speech. Guys, there's nothing more to say apart from make sure you look after yourselves, you look after each other, and please come back to the next Urb'n Barz reaction, guys.